Welcome to the Holy Post. The IRS has decided churches are no longer prohibited from endorsing political candidates. Is this a win for free speech, or a reason for some churches to become even more partisan? Then the Department of Homeland Security has released a creepy new promotional video that uses the Bible to frame border security as a mission from God. And then the Christian who gave George W. Bush the idea for compassionate conservatism says the passing of the Big Beautiful Bill marks the end of an era for the GOP. And I talk with Ryan Burge, a professor of sociology, who's back with data about the religious outlook of Gen Z. Some see evidence of a revival, but Burge says it's probably wishful thinking. Also this week, the latest chimp drip. As always, we have new content every day on Holy Post Plus exclusively for subscribers. This week, that includes a new episode of 66 Verses to Explain the Bible with Esau McCauley, a new episode of Getting Schooled by Caitlin Chess, a full episode of The Sky Pod where I speak with Drew Dick and cover the headlines, and we have a bonus interview with Ryan Burge about the lessons he learned when he published a more personal article about the closing of his church last summer, and why he'll probably not do that again. So go to holypost.com and sign up for Holy Post Plus today to get access to everything we're creating and to engage with others who are part of the growing Holy Post media community. Here is episode 678.
Hey there, welcome back to the Holy Post podcast. I'm Phil Vischer. I'm here with Sky Jitani.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, Sky. Who's just back. He just got off a plane last night while we're recording this, not when you're listening to this. Just got off a plane from California. He's out of Dave Gibbons' church. Didn't see Dave. Dave's out of town.
Apparently, Dave was at Shane Claiborne's birthday party.
Oh my gosh.
That's weird.
I know.
Why weren't we invited?
Exactly.
So you were like babysitting so Dave could go out with Shane.
I speak at New Song pretty much every other month, and I have never seen Dave when I'm there because he takes those weekends when I'm there to go do other stuff.
Shane Claiborne, we now know you had a birthday party and you didn't invite us.
Oh.
So just let that could affect future appearances on the Holy Post for you. I don't know. We might not.
Or birthday invitations.
Or birthday invitations.
Oh.
And also, Caitlin Chess is here. Hi, Caitlin.
Hi.
Hi. Also, we have a live studio audience. Small live studio audience.
Well, they're normal size.
They're normal size people, but they're small in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7.
Right.
We have 7.
Yes.
And
I'm so jealous.
And they're students.
They're from the Bridge program at Wheaton College, and they're here with their coordinator, leader, director, who's our friend, Dr. Theon Hill.
Yeah, I know Theon. He's been on the show multiple times.
Yes, he has.
Multiple times.
We need to have him back. He's got a really interesting book coming out.
Oh, well, then that's why we would have him back.
Why, you have to produce the work to earn your right on the show.
You can't just skate by on good looks, Theon. You got to do the work.
Although he could. He's a good-looking man.
He is a good-looking guy. Yeah. And now the theme song.
What's the news that you like the most? Who's your favorite podcast host? If it's breakfast, get your toast. It's Sky and Phil and the Holy Post. Sky and Phil and the Holy Post.
And sometimes Caitlin.
This episode of The Holy Post is sponsored by Hiya Health. Hey, do you have kids? Do you care about their health? Of course you do. Most kids' vitamins are basically candy in disguise, filled with 2 teaspoons of sugar, unhealthy chemicals, and other gummy junk kids really shouldn't be eating. That's why Hiya was created. The pediatrician-approved, super-powered, chewable vitamin for kids. 0 sugar, 0 gummy junk, yet they taste great and are perfect for picky eaters. Hiya fills in the most common gaps in modern children's diets to provide the full body nourishment our kids need with a yummy taste they love. And we've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you need to go to hiyahealth.com/holypost. This deal is not available on their regular website. Go to hiyahealth.com/holypost and get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults. And thanks to Hiya Health for sponsoring this episode.
With prices going up on just about everything these days, dealing with money can be super stressful. Trying to manage subscriptions, track your spending, cut costs without being overwhelmed, it's a mess. But thankfully, Rocket Money can relieve some of that stress and help you feel more confident in the financial decisions you're making. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money's 5 million members have saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions. And members save up to $740 a year when they use all of the app's premium features. So if you want to find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals more quickly, use Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/holypost today. That's rocketmoney.com/holypost. rocketmoney.com/holypost. And thanks to Rocket Money for sponsoring this episode.
I got a story from fashion news.
Oh, this is right up your alley.
Fashion news, but also animal news.
Oh.
And maybe also something else that I will not name.
No.
Here we go.
Chimps are sticking grass in their ears as they embrace a pointless fad. It's a fashion fad among chimpanzees. In Zambia, a group of avant-garde chimpanzees have been sporting blades of grass protruding from their ears.
I've got that going on, but it's not grass.
This shows that, like humans, other animals also copy seemingly pointless behaviors from one another, said researcher Edwin van Leeuwen from the University of Utrecht. Usually when animals copy one another, it serves some sort of purpose, but not all mimicked behavior is useful. Take the orca dead salmon hat trend, for
we've
example.
been there, yeah.
Oh, the orca dead salmon hat trend. Y'all students know about the orca dead salmon hat trend. Orcas were wearing dead salmons on their heads and swimming around with a dead salmon, like more than one. It wasn't just, it was a trend. It was like fashion for orcas for a while to kill a salmon and wear it on your head. And now we've got the grass in ear craze was first documented in 2010 when a female chimpanzee named Julie, blame it on Julie, was observed repeatedly inserting grass into her ear at Zambia's Chimfunchi Wildlife Orphanage Trust Sanctuary. Later, the idiosyncratic behavior would be adopted by 7 other chimps in the same group and persisted even after Julie's death, suggesting it had become a cultural tradition.
She's like Ann Wintour, what's her name from Vogue, who sets all the trends? Anna Wintour, yeah.
Oh.
Julie is the Anna Wintour of the chimp world.
How do you know who sets all the trends at Vogue?
She's very famous,
Just
Phil.
look at me, Phil.
Okay, I'm not looking at you right now. Fast forward some 15 years later, and chimpanzees in another group at the same sanctuary have started doing the same thing, despite having no contact with the original group.
Whoa.
Wait a minute.
That makes me think it's not a fashion choice.
Yeah, it makes me think there's some actual function
like a
here
biological.
that we don't know about.
5 out of 8 chimps were spotted wearing grass in their ears, while 6 chimps put their own unique stamp on the trend and put blades of grass in their butts.
We were waiting for this. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Their ass is grass.
Sky.
Sorry.
After tracking the animal for some time, the team noticed they were copying the behavior from each other and may have identified the original trendsetter who might not have been a chimp. Both groups where chimps put blades of grass in their ears had the same caretakers. These caretakers reported that they sometimes put a blade of grass or a matchstick in their own ears to clean them.
What?
Caretakers in the other groups said they did not do this. The chimps in one group then figured out to stick the blade of grass in another place as well.
You need that clean too.
So the humans started it.
It would appear that that's the theory. That's the theory that Julie the chimp, Julie the trend-setting chimp who writes for Vogue, saw the caretakers putting matchsticks and blades of grass in their ears to clean them. And she
How
wanted
dirty
to
were
do
these
it too.
people's ears that they needed to clean them at work?
I don't have the answer to that question, Kaylin.
Why were they doing that?
I don't know. They were just, but no other group of caretakers was doing that, and it didn't spread to any chimps outside of the groups that were cared for by those caretakers. Whoa. And that chimps started doing it because they thought, hey, that looks cool. I want to get in on that trend on the ground floor. I don't want to wait till everyone's doing it and it's not cool anymore. I want to be ahead. I want to be a trend setter, not a trend follower. And then somebody said, yeah, but what about the butt?
Okay, putting that aside.
Yeah.
Please do.
Are they? Is this just a theory that this is how it started, or they've concluded this is how it started, and it really genuinely
It has to only be a theory. How could they really know?
I don't know, but have they ruled out any other purpose for putting grass? Is it like sod? They're sticking like actual dirt clumps of grass, or is it just a blade?
I think it's just long blades.
A long blade, and they stick it in there.
Yeah, because look, there's a picture.
Oh.
See, there's a chimp with a piece of grass hanging out of their ear.
That's flattering.
Yeah, it's a long one, and it's just like looping down.
Yeah,
like a pretty bang.
Bang.
It's your hair.
No. It's like a dangly earring.
Like a dangly earring. Okay.
Cute.
Yeah. Sermon illustration.
Oh no,
You got anything? On this?
I think there's a trend here when you ask me this, because so many of these stories fit into the things spreading virally kind of. Mm-hmm. It's like yeast through the dough.
Right. Are you going to go there again?
That's what comes to my mind. But
But is this isn't good or bad? It's just pointless. So vanity, vanity, all is vanity.
That could work. That could work.
Thank you.
Who was it? Paul who talked about women should dress modestly.
I was just gonna say this. Right? Dang it, Sky.
With no dangly ear grass.
The funny thing is, a lot of Americans read those texts and assume he means like don't wear sexually provocative clothing, but that's not what he meant. He meant don't wear expensive, ornate clothing that
economically provocative,
exactly, or modestly, so that you don't flaunt your wealth among other believers who may have less.
Don't flaunt your grass.
Yeah, so it seems like, I wonder within chimpanzee society, are they doing this as like a status thing, like I'm cool, or I know what the in thing is?
Mm-hmm. And you could even be like, you think you're doing something very beautiful and status symbol-y, but maybe in the eyes of God, you look just as silly as these animals putting grass in their ear, and you're just doing it because other people are doing it.
Oh, one of my favorite proverbs is like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman without discretion.
Yeah, with grassy ears.
Right. So maybe like grass in a chimp's ear or butt is a beautiful woman without discretion.
Okay. Can we
let's just keep talking about beautiful women without discretion?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is there any way we could
you could fill in whatever
Is there any way we could universalize that so we're not picking on women?
How about just...
Let's pick on women.
Like a blade of grass in a chimp's butt is a person without wisdom.
Yes. That's...
cross-stitch that.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Okay. Carly sent us a note that was really nice after last week's show. She's 27. She said, I'm reaching out in response to the conversation last week about the cancellation of PEPFAR and broader government spending on programs that support the poor. Here's Carly's story. I'm a federal employee at the National Institutes of Health, and for the past 6 months, I've seen firsthand the effects of funding cuts to federal programs. What often gets missed in these conversations is the story of those of us who felt called to do this work. People of faith serving quietly in government or nonprofit roles, often behind the scenes, but deeply committed to God's call to serve and uplift others. She says, I first felt the call in high school. I believed God was leading me toward public service. So she went to Calvin University and graduated in 2020 with a degree in political science, moved to Washington, D.C. in 2021. And over the past 4 years, she says, God has guided my steps in ways I could never have imagined, ultimately bringing me to the NIH and into public service. She says, I believe God has always been calling me to help and love others, and I believe that for me, government is the path he's provided to do that. In February, 3 women from my small group were let go due to funding cuts. One worked at USAID. The other 2 were at international development nonprofits that lost critical support. Each of them felt called to their work. Each of them viewed their jobs as a form of ministry. I wanted to share this perspective with you, not just as someone impacted by these decisions, but as someone who believes deeply in the importance and sacredness of this kind of work.
And then she closed by saying, I understand that the Bible may not explicitly command governments to care for the poor, but it does call Christians to do so. And many of us are living out that calling through careers in public service, through government-funded programs, and through nonprofit work that partners closely with these systems. For us, it's not just a job. It's a form of obedience, an act of love, and a reflection of our faith.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thanks,
wow.
Carly. And hope you can keep doing what you're doing and you don't get
It's just a reminder. We
doged.
talked about this last week, but for some people who think all government is inherently bad, it's not.
Yeah.
Some programs are wasteful. Some programs are inefficient. Some programs are, have outlived their usefulness, and there always needs to be wisdom in applying what needs to stay, what needs to go. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of good people in government programs and jobs that are doing a lot of good work. And the funny thing is, those same people who say government is always bad would never speak ill of members of the military.
No.
And they're all government employees.
Yes.
So why is that form of government service praised?
We like the military.
And another form, like what Carly is doing, is demonized.
Military kicks butt. Carly doesn't kick butt. She helps people.
And that's bad because
it's not kick buttery. Because Carly can't fly a plane over my football game. That's cool.
Right. It is cool. It is very cool.
The Johnson Amendment.
Yay.
Have you heard of it?
I love this.
Sky's excited.
I am excited.
Sky is excited. The Johnson Amendment was an amendment from the 1950s sponsored by
Johnson & Johnson.
Lyndon
Oh.
Johnson, the future president, that prevented 501c3s from being explicitly politically active. He wasn't thinking about churches at the time. He was actually thinking about some of the soft money backing McCarthyism and other things like that. But since churches are 501c3s, it forbid the endorsement of politicians from the pulpit by pastors for 50, 60, 70 years. 70 years.
Did it though?
60. Yeah, no one has ever in any way. So the IRS under the Trump administration has said, they haven't changed the amendment, it's still there. They just said, we're not going to enforce it against churches. So if you're a church, if you're a pastor, go for it. Or as Ronald Reagan famously said, I can endorse you, and now you can endorse me. He didn't say that.
What did he say? You can't endorse me,
but
I
know
can
you can't endorse me, but I just want you to know that I endorse you.
It was a clever line.
Yeah.
It was a clever line.
Very clever.
That he did not come up with, actually.
Well,
What line did he come up with?
It was. Do you know who did come up with that line? Do you know who did come up with that line? James Robeson. James Robeson, one of the pastors that organized the event, who picked up Ronald Reagan to drive him to the event and suggested that line in the car while they were driving.
I did not know that.
okay, hold on though. Before we just
Yes.
poop on Reagan here.
I like Reagan.
Okay, I'm just
Partly.
saying politicians have writers and script.
yeah.
I know.
They all come up with
I
line
know. I'm not saying that.
Okay.
Okay. So, the Johnson Amendment is you can now we're a pastor. You're not a pastor anymore.
No.
You were defrocked.
I was not defrocked. Why are you spreading these rumors like I was disciplined in some way or kicked out? I was not.
Weren't you?
No.
Weren't you?
I was not.
Really?
I left voluntarily.
Okay, yeah, that's what I said about Bible college too.
Jeez.
So what you would be, if you were still a pastor, you would be like, yes.
No.
Yes.
Well,
now I can endorse candidates from the pulpit.
Hold on. There's like hysteria over this decision by the Trump administration. Do you know how many churches have been indicted or lost their 501c3 tax status because of political endorsement of a candidate since the Johnson Amendment was passed?
Close to zero?
Zero.
That's what I was going to say.
It's absolutely zero.
Yeah.
So
because it was such an immediate chilling effect that pastors just stopped preaching.
essentially what Trump is saying is what everyone has known for 60 years, which is the IRS. Hold on.
Okay.
I think a lot of churches have used the Johnson Amendment as an excuse to not talk about not just endorsing politicians, which I'm fine with churches not endorsing politicians, but I think a lot of churches have used the Johnson Amendment as an excuse to not talk about even political issues because they just don't want to rock the boat in their congregations. And what the Johnson Amendment is a piece of paper that's never really been enacted because no church has ever gotten in trouble for violating it.
Okay. Caitlin, I think Caitlin has a different point of view, and here it comes.
Well, I mean, totally agree with Sky. I think it's really important to this discussion that the Johnson Amendment has never functionally prevented any church from doing anything.
Right.
I kind of have the opposite take in that I think you're totally right that churches have used it as a justification for not saying anything political. I don't think they needed that, though, and I don't think they very often actually pointed to that. I think they had lots of other quasi-theological reasons for not saying anything about politics. I hear pastors and congregants in churches say way more often, like, we're not a political church, or we don't think Jesus had anything to do with politics, way more than they go, oh, sorry, our hands are tied. You know, we can't say anything about politics because of, you know, maintaining our tax exempt status. Maybe some people say that, but in my experience, especially in talking to churches who are bringing me in and going, are you going to stay in the right lines? Their concerns are not usually about taxes. They're usually theological. I actually think in some ways the Johnson Amendment, both I'm a fan of it, both because I think churches, and I think there's good reasons for other nonprofits to not endorse political candidates as well. But I think in some ways it actually was a helpful way for churches to articulate. I mean, I encouraged some pastors to say this when they were like, oh, some people from my church are going to be nervous about the legal parts of this. I would say, this is actually really helpful because it gives the distinction I want to give theologically for us too, which is to say we're not partisan, but we are political. We don't endorse particular political candidates, but we talk a lot about political issues, especially the ones that are relevant to our immediate neighborhood and neighbors that we want to care about. And I worry that not enforcing formally, because again, this is not a functional difference, but it does matter in that they have said now formally, we won't enforce this. Whereas before it was just sort of like, well, they haven't, so we still think they won't. I think doing this makes it a lot harder for churches to actually maintain that distinction, to say, we're going to talk about political issues, but we're not partisan, so we don't endorse political candidates. I think it'll be a little harder for the churches that want to maintain that line to actually do that. This change makes it harder.
Okay. That was a fantastic discourse that our audience, our studio audience, did not hear at all because we don't have a speaker so they can hear it. But let's pretend that our studio audience heard that and they were so excited by that they burst into applause. Did you hear that? Okay, now you.
Okay, I on a certain level agree with you, Caitlin. But doesn't that just simply mean that we need church leaders to step up and show some backbone?
Oh, I mean, yeah, totally. We've needed that
and not hide behind a government regulation, but say to their congregations, we are nonpartisan, but we still believe that the gospel and the kingdom of God impacts our collective life together. Yeah. And we are going to talk about issues that impact our neighbors and our communities and our country. And that is politics, but it's not partisan. Like, we just need church leaders to step up and do that and teach their people the difference. And show some backbone rather than hide behind the Johnson Amendment.
Even under the Johnson Amendment, could you have said, we believe this candidate is disqualified? Because that's not an endorsement. It's a disqualification.
You could say we believe any candidate that does X is disqualified, right? Or we believe, this issue.
Any candidate who's been spray painted orange is disqualified. Could you have said that?
You could, yeah.
Okay. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we also don't have any precedent of when it was enforced.
Exactly.
To go like,
that's my point.
This counted
and
or
there are lots of stories. A lot of Republicans love to point out the fact that historically a lot of black churches have done a lot of politicking from the pulpit.
Mm-hmm.
And they've never been held to the Johnson Amendment for that. And they go, is it double standard? Well, it's not a double standard because no white churches were prosecuted for that either. So at the end of the day, the free speech rights of every American, but the free speech rights of religious leaders and congregations to allow their faith to impact their political expression is sacrosanct in this country. Yeah. And so that's why the IRS has never come after any church that's talked about politics or even partisan ideas from the pulpit, because that's central to who we are as a country.
I think something else really important to say about this, and Steve Besner, who's been on the show before, wrote about this really quickly, and he has been a pastor for a long time. He's now no longer a pastor, but
was
one
he
of the points he made,
was he kicked out?
He was not defrocked.
Okay, good.
No. He left his church to teach at Baylor University.
Thank you. See, there are a lot of people who leave for voluntary reasons,
for
Phil.
good reasons.
Yeah.
And he is still a pastor in the sense that.
Then why did I find you crying in my backyard without your frock?
Anyway, he pointed out that the lack of this restriction yes, I think he's probably very aware, as we are, that like this has not been enforced against any particular church. He says that the lack of this, he's worried, will put churches in a more explicit position to be kind of propositioned by political action groups or other people to say like, we'll give a bunch of donations to the church if you support this candidate, or, you know, we know you agree with us on these positions, so just go a little further and give an explicit endorsement. And that's a concern I have too, is just that it's both a limitation that was put on that I think was helpful for pastors to lean on, to go like, hey, you think we're getting too political? We actually have this restriction legally and we can't pass it. And I want to give you a theological defense of why I actually think that difference between partisan and political is really important. But it also puts them in this position of like either being really tempted by those things. And I think it's a little easy for us not under those pressures and temptations to wag our fingers, which, I mean, it's not minor. It's pretty significant if you were actually being tempted by a political action group to take donations to your church in order to support a candidate. But people can be under ridiculous pressures and yield to things that it's easy right now for me to say, like, I would never yield to. And I think it's a reasonable concern to say there's also just going to be pressures in churches. There's already such great pressures on churches and church leaders when it comes to politics. This can put them in positions that are even worse.
I agree. But I also think in a weird way, it will be revealing, because there are probably some churches that are very partisan already and their leaders are very partisan,
totally.
but they haven't gone so far as to just be bold-faced endorsers from the pulpit. Now they will, and we'll see who they are, and we'll know more clearly who's really sold themselves out.
And then what?
And then we know not to go there. Like they're no longer wolves in sheep's clothing. They're just wolves.
I don't think we were anyway.
I know, but like there's something helpful in knowing who the wolves actually are.
Okay, you know Doug Padgett?
I do know Doug Padgett.
He's the founding pastor of Solomon's Porch in Minneapolis, a church. That's a church, not just a porch. And executive director of Vote Common Good, a liberal evangelical outreach. He's so liberal. Padgett called the move great news, suggesting it finally levels a playing field that historically favored conservatives. Padgett says the ruling empowers faith-minded progressives, opening space for more overt democratic engagement in religious communities.
I think it's ridiculous.
I'm not sure I understand that argument.
No, I don't think it is an argument.
Again, well, and the idea that progressive churches have not been doing as much politicking, right. I think the only way that makes sense is, are there less of them? Are they less vocal in some internet forums? Possibly. But is that happening? It is happening all the time.
That's right. And like we mentioned, a lot of, African Americans in this country are one of the solid voting blocks of the Democratic Party. And a lot of their churches, and this is not because they're eager to, bring politics into the church, but there's historically, the church has been the organizing institution of a lot of Black communities. So it's where a lot of things happen, including their political organizing happened.
If only we had someone in the room who could speak to that.
I know, if only.
Directly.
So it's just ridiculous for him to say that it's only the conservative churches that have been engaging in politics, and it's not.
Well, it's only the conservative churches that are engaging in politics that irritate me.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, since the IRS hasn't enforced this on any church, his argument doesn't hold up.
Right. Okay.
The one part of what he's saying that I think is helpful is it's a good reminder to many of us that our idea of what is like wrongful political activity for a church is, when it comes down to it, and I'm guilty of this myself in my instincts a lot of the time, is just comes down to like, do I like the politics they're talking about or not? I am nicer to the people who have politics that I like and harsher on the ones that I don't like. And it reminds me of, I had a group of Duke Div students who we were doing a whole unit on how the Bible is used in politics. We read an article about how the Old Testament is used. And they were just like, so quick to be like, get the Bible out of all politics. It should have nothing to do with it. The church shouldn't be involved in any way. Like none of this stay impartial, but no, it was like nothing. And all it took was like 2 minutes of me being like, what about the civil rights movement? For them all to be like, oh, yes, totally, yes. And I think there's good distinctions to be made between faithful and unfaithful uses. And the civil rights movement and the abolitionist movement in the U.S. are great examples of like, not just because they were on the right side, but the way they did it. There's lots of really powerful examples of faithful use of scripture and use of the church as a basis for organizing. But we have to be more thoughtful than just like, their instincts, I think, came out of that moment of just like, well, when it's white conservatives, I don't like it. When it's Black churches, I do like it. And I think there's better reasons to distinguish between like a white megachurch supporting Trump and a Black church in an impoverished neighborhood fighting for like particular leaders to be elected that will help the community. There's lots you could say about why that's different, but they weren't doing it. It was just like, I like this, I don't like this. Right. And we've got to do better than that.
Okay. Speaking of misusing scripture, On Monday, the Department of Homeland Security shared a propaganda video on Twitter. The 1-minute video opens with footage of helicopters taking off, and a man with a thick Southern accent says, "Here's a Bible verse I think about sometimes, many times." As people think, deliverance, go deliverance, kind of that.
Yeah.
As people in military fatigues don masks and ready weapons inside the helicopter, the man quotes Isaiah 6:8. "I heard the voice of the Lord saying, 'Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?'" As the helicopter takes off, a sonorous cover of Johnny Cash's "God's Gonna Cut You Down" plays before the man finishes the verse, "I said, 'Here I am, send me.'" Then a cut to a close-up of an arm patch that reads U.S. Customs and Border Protection. While Johnny Cash sings, "Sooner or later, God'll cut you down."
My goodness.
Oh my God.
So this is put out by the Department of Homeland.
This is from our government.
So, yeah.
This is not fan fiction. This is from our government.
This is our tax dollars at work.
This is our tax dollars.
What happened to the separation of church and state in this situation?
They're never in favor of the separation of church and state. Speaker Mike Johnson, when they passed the big, beautiful bill. Have you heard about the big, beautiful bill?
Yeah, I want to stick a piece of grass in it.
It is big. The beautiful part is questionable, but it's a reconciliation bill. That's the only way they could get it passed without being over the objections of Democrats. He tweeted Soli Deo Gloria, which of course means all the glory to God, and the verse, "All this is from God who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation."
What does that have to do with anything?
It's a reconciliation bill. Get it?
Oh my gosh. This is like Exhibit A in bad use of the Bible.
These Mike Johnson, everyone says, is an evangelical Christian, goes to church, reads the Bible, prays, and stuff.
Just because you see the word reconciliation.
Yeah, and it's in a verse too.
In the verse.
And it's the name
you can't
in your
apply
bill.
it to everything that also includes the word reconciliation.
And we give God the glory because we just took Medicaid from about 10 million people and food stamps from several million.
But we got a tax cut extension, Phil.
Got a tax cut, and we got $120 billion to chase illegal immigrants around the country. $120 billion. Mm-hmm. That'll buy a lot of face masks and zip ties. Why? Help. What's happening? Do they think we're stupid?
Yes.
Okay.
Do they think we're stupid?
Caitlin,
Caitlin?
make us not stupid.
Okay, I didn't know you were coming in with that 2 Corinthians one. That's a whole other. But I want to say something about the Isaiah verse, because the first thing I thought when I read the article about this ad, which I couldn't bring myself to watch, was that quite a few years ago, this was also a verse, one of the few verses that was an explicit reference by President Biden. And he was talking not about ICE, but about the U.S. military. And he said they have responded to the call in the book of Isaiah, "Here I am, Lord, send me," which I just point out to say this is like not a partisan temptation.
So I think our studio audience didn't hear that Biden used the same verse to promote signing up for the military a few years ago.
Yeah,
we're going to say both of those are bad.
And Caitlin
both of those are bad.
You wrote a whole book on using the Bible in political discourse, and there's no shortage of violations of good Bible interpretation on both sides.
Yep. Okay, but here's I think the most important thing about this that really got me going about the Isaiah reference that I wish I had thought of when Biden used it, because I wrote in the Ballad in the Bible about Biden's use of it as an example of both sides do this and they do it casually. And one of the things we're so often doing is kind of inscripting ourselves into a biblical narrative, not as the people of God, but as the nation of America, and implanting into the text our own ideas of what the mission of God is, or what counts as success, or what counts as flourishing. And one of the things that is so seductive about this particular verse from Isaiah is it's pretty general language. "Here I am, Lord, send me." Everyone wants to be wrapped up in this grand cosmic mission where you have an important part to play and God has called you and you're doing it.
It's the Blues Brothers. We're on a mission from God.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but yeah, that's the exciting. But
Caitlin just said, our beloved studio audience, I don't know what that is.
I don't think they do either.
Oh, do you know what the
They
Blues
probably
Brothers
don't.
movie is?
I
Have
doubt
any
they
of you
do.
seen the Blues Brothers movie? Any?
Theon
No.
has.
No one in our studio
This
audience
is what I'm saying.
has seen the Blues
Okay.
Brothers movie.
This is why I should be there.
That's
Okay, but this is the
your
most-
homework for tonight. Go home and watch the Blues Brothers movie, and you'll learn all about Chicago blues and rhythm and blues. And that's what it's a celebration of rhythm and blues.
Okay. Sorry, Caitlin,
Okay,
you were
but
saying.
this is the most important part. This is a really easy, grab and go verse for like attaching to whatever political project you want to inscript people into. But one of the things we miss, besides the fact that obviously the mission that God is giving Isaiah is not whatever modern political mission we are asking people to join, I think one of the crucial things we miss is that it's a few verses before this that is another pretty famous passage from Isaiah where the beginning of this revelation is happening. And Isaiah says, "Woe to me, I am ruined. I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. And my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty." I mean, the beginning of this moment of calling and of Isaiah responding to this calling begins with Isaiah's sense of his unworthiness for the calling he's being given and his recognition of his own sinfulness and the sinfulness of his people and their desperation for God to enter into their situation and tell them what to do. And what makes it so insidious then when we take the call later and apply it to any political mission we want is that part of what's happening both with Biden's example and with this ICE commercial is an totally unwarranted confidence that we are not only doing the right thing, but God is on our side.
Mm-hmm.
And even when Isaiah, who has every reason to be the one that's very confident that he is doing the right thing and God is on his side, before that moment of calling, has this deep sense of his own sinfulness, his own need for God, his own uncertainty about what's next. And instead of taking that part of we're always in the middle of what God is doing, uncertain of what's going to happen next, trying to be faithful, trying to do the right thing, trying to respond to how Scripture has described how faithful people should live, how a good community should function, but always aware that we are sinful and lost and going to make lots of mistakes, both of stumbling and also of sinning against people. And that level of humility is necessary if there are appropriate moments for us to say, I think God is calling us to a mission, let's do it. But if it's not starting with that sense of humility, you end up with this ICE commercial or even a president saying, the U.S. military is on the side of God.
All right, yeah, that's a great explanation, Caitlin, but you're going to the verses before the ones that are cited in this ad. What about the verses after? Because this is the part that gets me, is whether it's this ICE commercial about viewing immigrants as invaders that we're protecting America from, or it's going
on
back
a
to
mission from God.
Right, or it's Biden's use of this verse to recruit the people into the U.S. military to fight foreign wars. Both of those examples are we're being called to protect our people against bad people outside
Other
of America. That's the perception. Isaiah is sent to Israel with God's message of rebuke and judgment of his own people.
No, we don't like that.
Exactly.
That's not what we want.
So if you really want to take this verse and apply it, then it shouldn't be God's going to help us attack our enemies.
God's going to help us kick your butts.
Right.
That's what I want.
God is sending us to rebuke and reform our own injustice.
Oh, no.
That's what Isaiah's mission was.
Oh, that's not good.
I know. There's just so many levels on which this text is horribly applied.
Okay, Marvin Olasky was the longtime editor, very well-respected Christian journalist, longtime editor of World Magazine, recently retired. He recently called the passage of the Big Beautiful Bill, quote, the final burial of compassionate conservatism. And he would know, John Fia, our friend John Fia writes in Religion News Service, because Marvin Olasky, his work at the University of Texas inspired the compassionate conservative theme of George Bush's 2000 presidential campaign. Now, Caitlin, you weren't born yet, so you don't remember George Bush's presidential campaign.
She was born.
I was born.
She just wasn't.
But you hadn't yet
I
engaged.
wasn't politically conscious.
Yeah, your first book was still in outline form. Bush gave his first speech on compassionate conservatism in First of all, for those of you out there saying, oh, so you're going to say that the Bush administration was the model of Christian political... No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying he made a point that conservatives should try to be compassionate.
It was a rhetorical
thing. Bush gave his first speech on compassionate conservatism in 1999 in Indianapolis. He promised, if elected president, to put $8 billion into the federal budget for compassion-oriented programs and policies. Congress never appropriated the money, forcing Bush to advance his new brand of conservatism through executive orders. You ever heard that song before?
Mm-hmm.
that established centers for faith-based and community initiatives. The goal was to use the power of the federal government to fund faith-based charities working with the poor. Huh.
He also passed PEPFAR, which we talked about.
Yeah, that's in there too. He believed that a society defined by the teachings of Jesus would bring aid to the most vulnerable members of society. He took on the Libertarian business wing of the GOP and said, "My party has confused the need for limited government with a disdain for government itself." So it was partly in response to Reagan saying government isn't the solution, government is the problem. He sounded like a gangster. You weren't old enough to remember.
I am old enough to remember.
In his speech accepting the GOP nomination, Bush committed to shoring up Medicare. He told stories about hopeless people he met at faith-based ministries and organizations. He called upon the American people to consider their responsibilities to these men, women, and children, the poor, the immigrants, and the addicts. He sounds like a Democrat. What was the matter with him? That's not what we believe anymore. And then he championed PEPFAR, which saved, we think, about 26 million lives in Africa during the AIDS, over the past 30 years now. So Bush's words, again, were written by Michael Gerson, who was an evangelical Christian. Ladies and gentlemen, seldom has history offered a greater opportunity to do so much for so many. He described PEPFAR as a work of mercy.
I think Michael Gerson was a Wheaton grad, wasn't he?
I believe he was.
Yeah.
So John Hiya closes by saying middle-class evangelicals who share the faith of George W. Bush are some of the strongest supporters of both Trump's big, beautiful bill and the DOGE cuts that led to the dismantling of USAID. Most of them will enjoy their tax cuts and try not to think too much about the people who will suffer as a result. And then this, I didn't realize this. In the early morning hours of July 3rd, House Speaker Mike Johnson brought 4 GOP holdouts onto the floor and, to win their votes, prayed with them. And then John Hiya asks, what exactly did he pray for?
So they were undecided?
Yeah.
And he prayed with them and then they decided to vote for it?
Somehow.
Did he make them an offer they couldn't refuse?
I don't know. In the form, have you ever used a prayer to say something?
This is one of my pet peeves in church. I hate when people preach through their prayer.
But what about parenting through your prayer? When you say, Lord, please help my kids get along better next time we go to Target.
I don't believe in that. I just threaten my children.
Okay, that's good.
I just go direct.
I think that's why you were defrocked.
No, I'm not passive aggressive. I'm just aggressive.
Yeah. So why did I read that? Oh, so Olasky, who wrote some of the work that inspired the compassionate conservative movement, is calling the death of that movement.
I think it's been dead quite a while.
Maybe.
I mean, we're in rigor mortis at this point.
Maybe.
Like, this is not like it just flatlined yesterday.
So here's the deal. There's been a libertarian strain in American conservatism, for a long, long, long time, as a reaction to the New Deal. There's too many new programs, too much new stuff happening. I don't like it. And then as a reaction to the civil rights movement, we said, they're telling states what to do. They have no business telling states what to do. I don't like it. So this movement we want the government as what's his face? I forget the guy's name, but he says, we want the federal government to be small enough to drown in a bathtub. Grover Norquist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had dinner with him once.
No, you didn't.
He tried to drown me in a bathtub.
You're making that up.
I'm kidding.
So it's hard to overstate how much libertarianism has infected American Christianity. Mm-hmm. And again, I mentioned last week, I've been having an argument online with a guy for 10 weeks now over why Christians should oppose any use of federal funds. You know who Howard Phillips is?
No.
He's one of the co-founders of the Moral Majority.
Was I supposed to know that?
You should. You know Paul Weyrich.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was his partner in convincing Jerry Falwell to co-found the Moral Majority.
Well, why is Weyrich so much better known?
I don't know, because he was more quotable. Howard Phillips also founded the Conservative Caucus. He also founded the Heritage Foundation.
Oh.
He did all sorts of stuff. He was a student of R.J. Rushdoony.
Okay.
Yeah, Rushdoony, Christian Reconstructionism, the Old Testament law should be America's law.
Again, terrible exegesis of the Bible.
Horrible exegesis of the Bible. So I was listening to, how R.J. Rushdoony led Howard Phillips to Christ. Howard Phillips convinced Jerry Falwell to become political and start the moral majority.
Is this like 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon,
is.
only with Rushdoony?
Yes, it all goes back to Rushdoony. Anywho, I was listening to an interview of Howard Phillips with Rushdoony, R.J. Rushdoony, because R.J. Rushdoony had a podcast in the 1980s.
No, he didn't.
He did. They sent it out to his followers on cassette tape. He sat down with people, recorded an interview, and then mailed cassette tapes out.
Could you imagine if we had to do that
I know.
Wow.
with the Holy Post?
Yeah, that's why we have interns here sitting in the
Oh my
audience
gosh.
so they can start duplicating cassette tapes and sending them out to our mailing list. So here's an interesting quote. In 1983, I was listening to Howard Phillips talk to Rushdoony, R.J. Rushdoony, about America, the state of America. And Howard Phillips said, the only way we're going to take this country back, okay, this is 83, sorry. So this is long, we're using this language for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We have to take America back. The only way we're going to take this country back is by confrontation between the forces of good and the forces of evil. So he was arguing against current Republicans who wanted to negotiate with Democrats. We're not going to do it by negotiation. We have to do it by confrontation. He then he lists the evils of our society that we have to fight and destroy. Socialized medicine, welfare, any government agency not authorized by a simple reading of the Constitution, regulations that restrict preferential freedoms like gun ownership. Okay, so this is the guy who helped launch the religious right.
And which of those are 4 issues you just mentioned?
Yeah.
Which of those are explicitly talked about in Scripture?
None.
Exactly. So
None.
what is Christian about this?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Okay.
So that's the amazing thing. It's all libertarianism that infected. So you could almost look at the religious right as a libertarian project.
Yeah, it maybe started that way, but I don't think it's there anymore.
Well, no. What are you kidding me? We're now almost successfully drowning the federal government.
Yeah,
in a
no.
bathtub.
But I think it's shifting a little bit because it's gone from just government go away to we want to weaponize government to do what we want it to do. It's illiberalism now.
True.
So.
Of course, we just added 120 million to the billion to the ICE budget so we can have the president can have his own police force.
Yes, that's my point. Is it's no longer libertarian.
That is not libertarian. Well, Trump is not libertarian.
Exactly.
So he's a ball of contradiction.
But the people who are supporting him, they may have been libertarian in their origins, but now they're fully on board with him having more power. There's more debt in the government than ever.
Yeah.
They want to shut down the freedoms and free speech rights of the groups and people they don't like.
All right.
They want to weaponize the government on their behalf.
So we've lost the thread.
Yeah, I think so.
There's no more thread.
It started that way, I agree. But it went...
Rushdoony, Howard Phillips, Jerry Falwell, James Dobson.
And remember, a lot of
now
this,
it's just all
especially in the
blah.
South, a lot of this was because they wanted to keep the IRS out of their segregated schools.
Yeah, right. That was one of the strains that fed into
So the argument was just leave us alone. Let us be racist, please. Don't interfere with our way
Not
of
for
life.
all of them, because there were Northerners.
Fine, but I'm talking about in the South.
Yeah.
Right? Which most of these guys were in the South.
They weren't. Phyllis Schlafly was in Illinois.
You didn't mention her. I'm talking about Falwell and his crew.
Yeah.
So they just wanted the federal government to leave them alone.
Yes.
We are well beyond that point.
Yes.
People don't want the federal government to leave them alone. They want to weaponize the federal government to enact what they think
keep
the country should be against their enemies.
Drag queens out of libraries.
Right.
Kaylin, help.
I feel like the summary of the last few minutes could just be like, people are inconsistent. And like, this is not shocking news to anyone, but I do think it's helpful to recognize, even in conversations with specific people, right? We talked about this last week. This comes up all the time with me, with people that I talk to, is this idea that just obviously small government is good and big government is bad. Are they, to Skye's point, totally consistent in that? Absolutely not. But this is where, on a one-on-one basis, you have to be willing to like not just kind of react quickly to every single inconsistency or argument that doesn't make sense in order to get at the heart of like what is really motivating what's going on here.
What's the heart, Caitlin?
Yeah,
Tell us.
I mean, I think it depends on the person, but we've talked before on the show a ton about the like fear and anxiety and mix of sense of identity and community that plays into all of these questions. But you're not going to get anywhere either on a broad scale. We're not going to be able to describe well what's happening in the country if we just kind of go, oh, well, they're inconsistent with these policies, or one-on-one conversations. We're not going to get anywhere that way. It's important. Like I said last week, I think it matters. There was tons of literature written, especially in the middle of the 20th and then like later in the 20th century, for explicitly evangelicals on these questions of big and small government, welfare state, like those kinds of things. That has shaped and influenced people. Some of the language they use, some of the Bible verses they know to go to come from having been shaped by that kind of literature. However, why someone holds on to that so strongly and is often inconsistent with it is because most humans aren't actually motivated by being like powerfully captivated by a political philosophy.
Totally true.
Like the people who are going to the small government is so great, big government is, a lot of times in my experience, it's not true with everyone, but one of the stories that's often underlying that when people hold tightly to that, but inconsistently, is because the part of it they really want to hold on to is the idea that if they are successful, it is because they worked hard and they deserve it, or their father worked hard and deserved it, or their grandfather worked hard and deserved it. And a different way of viewing the economy and the government and their community threatens their sense that me or my family are good, hardworking people who have given our children something good. And there's different versions of that story depending on your background and your, but that's one example. There's lots of other stories that are true of this, but we have to like be really honest about the fact that when someone feels really strongly about this, part of the reason they hold it so inconsistently is because it's not an economic philosophy that really captivated them. It's a sense of their own identity, community, a story about themselves and their family or their community that they really want to tell, even if it's not totally consistent.
I agree entirely. And I think a simpler way of putting it is this whole more libertarian small government impulse among a lot of American evangelicals is it's essentially the grass in the ears of chimpanzees. They don't know why they're doing it. It serves no practical function. They just know this is what our tribe does to be cool. And if you were to trace it back far enough, you'd realize that it all came from Rushdoony sticking a piece of grass in his ear one day.
No.
And everyone's just been copying it and not thinking about why are we actually doing this anymore?
Sky.
Oh, Caitlin
That
really
is the
disagrees with that.
opposite of what I just said.
No, it's not. Because I think there is a sense of community identity that this is what my tribe believes.
Yeah.
I don't know why we believe it exactly,
Yeah.
but this is what my tribe believes, and I want to feel included in my tribe. Therefore, I will parrot these ideas because it's what my tribe says I have to do.
William F. Buckley Jr. That's a missing piece that we'll talk about later.
Was he the zookeeper with the dirty ears?
He predates Rushdoony.
Yeah.
And he wed libertarianism to traditionalism and religiosity.
Yeah.
That was William F. Buckley Jr., which we'll talk about later. Take us home, Kaylin. Take us home. We're over time. We went too long. Half of our audience has fallen asleep. There's popcorn's all over the floor.
I just want to say, without fully answering what Sky just said, which I want to because I disagree with him, but without doing that, I'll just say, I think sometimes it is easier for us to find explanations of this that make other people out to be more stupid than we are.
Oh,
and
yes.
it is a lot harder
Of course.
to find explanations for this that really honor some of the like deeply held values that they might be trying to protect, even if in a really wayward way, even if in a way that the policies they're supporting don't actually get those goals passed, even if they're inconsistent with their policies or with the people they support. But I think for the sake of our families and communities and neighborhoods and for the politics of our country, it's so hard to find the most charitable way to describe how someone is acting and believing politically. But I think we're going to actually better understand them and more accurately describe what they're saying if we try and describe it in a way that makes it sound like it makes sense for someone to do this. Not just that they've been kind of captive by an evil political leader or that they're doing something mindless, but that they're trying in a way that we might not understand or that might even be actually grievously wrong to do something positive with values that they believe are good. And our ability to say, I agree with you on those values. I agree that your family did something really powerful and good. I think that like hard work really matters. I think the legacy you inherited from your family is beautiful and good. And here's a different way to articulate that politically or to seek that for other people or to maintain that for yourselves, I think will be more effective in conversation with them and better for our country.
All right.
She's so charitable.
I know. I'm giving her the last word.
Yeah.
You do not get to respond.
I just think she's charitable.
Live audience, I need you to vote by applause which argument you agreed more with.
What the heck?
Did you agree more with Sky's argument or Caitlin's argument?
I want you to know they're
so
applauding.
unfair.
They're applauding for the argument they couldn't hear. That's how terrible
I know, but
I know.
if they could see Caitlin, they would just clap for her because honestly, her motives are more pure.
I don't think we're actually contradicting each other.
Oh,
Okay,
tune
I'll
in.
find you about it later.
Tune in next time
Yeah.
on Holy Post Plus. You'll find out whether they were or weren't contradicting each other. Hey, where'd my audio go?
I hear you.
Oh, my headphones unplugged.
Hey, Phil, plug in your headphones.
My headphones unplugged. I can't hear anything. Help. Mommy,
Just
where
wrap
am
it,
I?
Phil. Wrap it.
I'm so confused. I'm going to wrap it up now. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming along. Go to Holy Post Plus, see all the cool stuff that Caitlin's doing and Sky's doing and Esau's doing and I'm not doing. But I'm here every Monday. I'm here just for you guys. And I just want you to know that. Take care of yourselves, someone else. Advocate. Go to worldrelief.org/advocate. Go check it out because people need our help. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
The Holy Post is sponsored by BetterHelp. We are living in crazy times, and that can be hard on your mental health. Plus, relationship stress, parenting, marriage, and work stress, it all adds up. Well, don't try to handle all this on your own. You can get help from trained professionals. But the economy and tariffs and the price of eggs, adding therapy onto all that feels like a huge investment, and the cost of traditional in-person therapy can be huge, costing anywhere from $100 to $250 per session. Online therapy with BetterHelp can save you, on average, up to 50% for each session. BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served more than 5 million people around the world. It's easy, too. You can join a session with the click of a button to help fit therapy into your busy life. And you can switch therapists at any time. You can do better than just survive these crazy times. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/HolyPost today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/HolyPost.
You know that I'm a skeptic. I like things to have evidence, proof, data. I like to research things before I commit to them. And that even goes for my supplements. I want to know that they're high quality. That's why for the last year, I've been drinking AG1. Unlike many supplement brands, AG1 conducts relentless testing to set the standard for purity and potency. I know I can trust what's in every scoop of AG1 because it's tested for 950 contaminants and banned substances, while the industry standard typically only tests for 10. AG1's ingredients are also heavily researched for efficacy and quality, and I love that every scoop also includes prebiotics, probiotics, and digestive enzymes for gut health. So, if you want to replace your multivitamins and your digestive aids, your immune support into just one simple scoop, start with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 and K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first subscription at drinkag1.com/holypost. That's drinkag1.com/holypost. Go check it out, and thanks to AG1 for sponsoring this episode. Church attendance has been steadily declining in the US for about 30 years, but recent data indicates that might be slowing down or even stopping. On top of that, there have been a number of stories in the mainstream media lately about young people, and especially young men, who are being drawn to more traditional forms of Christianity, like Eastern Orthodoxy and Catholicism. So are all these signs that Gen Z might be having a desire for religion, and specifically Christianity? Is the decline of faith in America finally coming to an end, and is this the beginning of a religious revival? My guest today says there's a gap between what many in the church and even the mainstream media want to see and what the data actually shows. And there's no one better to explain the numbers than Ryan Burge. He's no stranger to the Holy Post. In fact, he's one of our esteemed Holy Post pundits and a professor at Eastern Illinois University. He's nationally recognized as an expert on data about religion, churches, and different religious trends in the U.S. He's also a pastor, or has been one for 17 years, of First Baptist Church in Mount Vernon, Illinois, until it closed last July. He and I talk about that in a bonus interview today exclusively for Holy Post Plus subscribers. We're going to link to his article about Gen Z in the show notes so that you can dive even deeper into the subject and decide for yourself what's really going on with the spiritual vision of this youngest generation of Americans. Here's my conversation with Ryan Burge.
Ryan Burge, welcome back to the Holy Post.
Always a pleasure, Sky.
All right, I enjoy our conversations. You've got a ton of great content on your Substack, graphsaboutreligion.com. Everyone should go there and check it out. Subscribe, because you are the best source out there for getting a pulse on what's happening in the American church. Let's begin with this piece that came out last month. You're addressing the question, is there a religious revival occurring among Generation Z?
Yeah.
Now, there's been some data that shows that the decline in church attendance has leveled off. Right. And some people, and
that's correct.
And then there's anecdotal things happening. Like there was that revival at Asbury a couple of years ago.
Correct.
There's more young men engaged in religion. There's more conversation about it in some cultural outlets like the Joe Rogan podcast, places like that. Does this add up? Does the data show that there's an actual change happening, or is this all vibes?
Isn't it all vibes at this point, Sky?
Well, it is, but there's vibes, and then there's vibes that are actually coming from something that's actually occurring.
Okay, so let me give you a little backstory of why I wrote that piece.
Okay.
I get the media emails me a lot, and by the media I mean like third string outlets that you probably never heard of. Like I don't get the New York Times that much, but the New York Times will write something, and then it sort of like filters down through the media ecosystem, and then like not little, you know what I mean? Like less well-known journalists will pick up on an idea and want to write about it as well, and they want me to give them a pull quote. Okay. But the problem is they flock around certain ideas that are probably not true, but they've heard a little dip and dab and drip and drab from here, there, and everywhere that it might be true, and they want to write a story about it. And this one was there's a huge religious revival among Gen Z. And by the way, you can blame the New York Post for this. Like, they're the real culprits.
Why?
Here.
What did they do?
They've written a series of stories about how, like, the Orthodox Church, you know, like Eastern Orthodoxy, has seen an upsurge in young men joining the church.
Yeah, I've seen those reports.
Yeah, and then they wrote one about how some Catholic dioceses are seeing a huge surge in adult converts.
Mm-hmm.
But then you go look at the data, and it's like they had 30 more this year than last year in a diocese of 100,000. You know what I mean? So it's like you can pull these anecdotes out. And by the way, the Orthodox Church in America, according to their own records, is only 600,000 people. So, like, what are we talking about here? And so they'll want to connect these dots in a way that like tells a news story about American. And I say, like, even the start of the post, there's two reasons why people want this story to be true. One, because Christians always want revival. They want to see revival.
Mm-hmm.
And two, even like interested observers about American religion just want a new story about American religion that's not decline.
Right, because we've been in that story for 30 plus years.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's boring.
And so they're like, it's like wish casting is what I call it. Like, maybe this could be possibly true. Let's ask Ryan. He can give us a quote. And I kind of written a little bit on the edges here, there, and everywhere, but I was like, you know what? Let's just do like a big magnum opus, 2,500 word, 3 data sets, 8 graphs. Just make the case that honestly, the data says that there is not a religious revival happening among Gen Z. There might be a religious plateau, but I would in no way call that a revival.
So it's one thing to stop the bleeding. It's another to have an actual like revitalization of the corpse.
Yeah, like if your company made $1 million last year and $1 million this year, would you say that's good? I mean, you're making $1 million, but you're not making more than $1 million. Like, it's not getting worse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's, and this is what I get the pushback is, well, it's not getting worse, so that's good. I'm like, it's not getting worse, that's not good. I mean, it's it's not bad either.
Okay, so you don't see this as a prerequisite to the inevitable revival that some people think is coming.
Okay, so when I say there's a pause, the number I'm looking at there is religious affiliation. Okay, that's the share of people who say they're atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular. Mm-hmm. The nuns, right? Wrote a couple books about them. The share of them, of young people who are nuns, is 45%. It's among 45% of people born in the 1990s and among people born in the 2000s. So it's stayed right around 45%. That's good. But then you look at, there's other measures of religion besides affiliation, right? Like attendance. Gen Z attends church at a rate that far below millennials, and even far below millennials when they were the age of Gen Z now. So You can't, like they say, oh, it's unfair to compare Gen Z now to millennials now because millennials are in their 30s and 40s.
Right, apples to apples. Compare them when they were young. Right.
Mm-hmm. And guess what? Gen Z is still at 6 or 7 points more likely to never attend religious services 18 to 29 compared to millennials when they were 18 to 29.
Okay, hold on though. So as a sociologist, as somebody who looks at all this data, is there certain data that would indicate if there were a revival? Is it church attendance? Is it affiliation? What do you look at to go, if there were to be a revival, what numbers would you expect to move?
I would expect, so the way we think about it is belief is the last thing to go. Like Americans still believe in God a bunch. Right. Even like 85% of Americans still believe in God at some level. So, okay, I will give you a silver line, like a bad news, good news graph. Okay, it's belief in God by generation. If you compare Gen Z, they're the least likely to believe in God without a doubt of any generation. Bad news if you're a Christian. Okay. The good news is the share of Gen Z who says God doesn't exist is actually not statistically different than any prior generation. So, pretty good news.
Wait a minute. I don't get that. How can they be the least likely to believe God exists, but no more than anyone else?
They're in the middle. They pick like some higher power or like an agnostic position or, like I believe in God's with some doubts.
Okay, so they have less certainty.
Exactly right. They're much more in the middle of the belief spectrum than the other generations are.
Okay, great. So, what? Take off your like statistician hat and put on your pastor hat a little bit.
Okay.
Why do you think we have this chronic need to believe in an imminent revival in this country? Why do so many Christians think, oh, it's here, this is it, it's right around the corner, this is the proof, this is the evidence? What psychological need does that belief provide for us?
Oh, because I'm the prophet of doom, and it's awful being the prophet of doom, Sky. Like, it really is. Like, I take no joy in that. Like, to walk into a room of, like, Episcopalians and be like, hey, guys, it's going to get worse from here, does not feel good. I'd rather say, hey, man, younger generation, they're more on fire for God than you guys are. And here's how I know. And I'd love to write a book, Sky, called The Coming Religious Revival Among Generation Z. That book would sell 100,000 copies, but it's not true. So I think there's always this optimistic thread that if we're doing the right thing, we're going in the right direction. There's positive developments right over the horizon because we put our shoulder to the wheel and we are good and faithful servants. And if we are faithful, then God will reward our faithfulness with revival, with positive numbers. And can I just go on a little side note here for a second?
Sure.
You're a theologian in a way that I am not a theologian. So explain this to me, okay? Even dispensationalism, which is the predominant eschatology of evangelicalism in America, presupposes that the world is getting worse and worse. Wars and rumors of wars and famine and disease, and all these will be signs that the end times are coming, right?
Yes. That is dispensationalism.
That is dispensationalism. But those same people will say we have to elect someone like Donald Trump to pull us out of the moral decay that we're in right now.
Yeah. This is a question we've talked about numerous times on the Holy Post, is why this internal contradiction among people who hold these views? Or we in a recent episode, we're talking about Mark Driscoll, and he put out these videos about the war between Israel and Iran and freaking out about how this is like the end of the world. This is a precursor to Armageddon. And argues like this is a terrible thing. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. If you believe that this is the precursor to the return of Jesus, that's celebrated in the New Testament. It's come Lord Jesus in the book of Revelation. But why then are the very people who are claiming belief in Christ and his restoration of all things freaking out when they interpret things in the world as signs that this is about to happen? It doesn't make sense. It's very inconsistent.
Same thing here, though.
Totally.
Why pray for revival? Well, like you want the remnant, the faithful remnant to be left at the end, right?
Well, okay. On the other side, a lot of these dispensationalists are also rather Arminian in their theology, and they want to see more people come to saving faith before the end. So that fuels a desire for revival, although I think there's more complicated reasons for why people want revival. Okay, hold on. We've done kind of the sociologist hat. We've done the pastor hat a little bit. Let's talk about the historian hat, which neither of us technically are. But
correct.
When you look back at prior revivals that have swept through this country, the Second Great Awakening, the First Great Awakening, maybe there's others that you can point to more regionally. Were there precursors in the data that indicated like things are primed for revival? Because it seems to me from an outsider's point of view, like, isn't the whole very nature of revival that it was unpredicted? That it's a spontaneous outpouring of God's Spirit upon a people, and they are brought back to life like the dry bones? Like, why do you people think it's going to be like, oh yeah, here's the data, it's coming, this is it? Why? It seems strange. So were there previous revivals where it was predicted that this is what was happening by the data?
Okay, so I have this conversation a lot, and I think it's important to have here. I am a social scientist, which means that my epistemology, to use a big fancy pants philosophical term, like how do I know stuff?
Right. My
epistemology is that natural phenomena have to have natural causes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I cannot believe that God did it. That does not work in my regression models. Okay, there is no supernatural. I have to be a social scientist. I have to be an academic, and you can't use those things in academia. Peer review does not like that idea very much.
Mm-hmm.
So when I write posts, for instance, on like, here's the formula to grow a church, and I'll talk about like county level demographics that make your church much more likely to be prosperous than not. For instance, being a growing county with a high educational attainment and good income and good mobility and da-da-da-da. And then the pushback will get, well, what if God did not call me to plant a church in Charlotte, North Carolina? I go, well, good luck.
You are the doomsdayer, aren't you?
I am the but the thing is, like, again, I have to go back to natural phenomena having natural causes.
Right.
And to talk about revival for a minute, okay? If you look back at especially the Second Great Awakening, really that was predicated on the fact there were these two upstart religious ideas in America called Baptists and Methodists who decided a totally different way to do religion in America was bottom up, largely bottom up. Now the Methodists have become very top down. That's a whole different story. But at the time it was, we found a young man who seems, smart and entrepreneurial, and he lives in Philadelphia. Here's $20. There's a horse. Go west, start a church, and don't come back.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? It worked like crazy.
It was very American, very entrepreneurial, very free market kind of way of thinking about religion, which is new, very new.
Very new. So I think if we look back on this and say there could be a revival in America, where would it come from? I think the newest iteration of that idea is the non-denominational church pastor.
Okay.
Because how do they get started? A lot of them just start themselves. They don't even get the $20 in the horse. They're just like, I'm going to start a church in my basement. Let's go. And then all of a sudden they got 500 or 1,000 people 5 years from now. And they don't know what they're doing because they're not really equipped to run an organization that large. But I think the bottom-up nature of that and the social media can add fuel to that fire. Mm-hmm. So I do think if one happens, it will be because of the rise of non-denominationalism. That's the new Baptist Methodist of the 21st century.
So, okay. When I think back or read back on the Second Great Awakening and the trends you're talking about, there were some celebrity preachers, Charles Finney and others like that went around the country and did stuff. But for the most part, the rapid growth of religion in America during the 1820s, 1830s, that era, it wasn't because of a few personalities. It was because of the movements you're talking about, these populist movements of religion, the Baptists and the Methodists, things like that. But what you're describing as a potential source of revival today is really personality driven.
Yeah.
It's really having a handful of very visible social media megachurch kind of personalities that people are very drawn to, which seems like a very different and a little bit creepier method of bringing religion to the masses if it's growing because there's a savvy personality behind it on Twitter or Instagram or something.
It's the talk, Sky. You got to be on the TikTok. That's what the kids like nowadays.
Uh-huh.
The vertical videos.
But okay, so that aside, though, is there any evidence, going back to the data, that Gen Z, maybe they're not affiliating more with Christianity, maybe they're not attending a church anymore? Is there any data that indicates they care more about the questions that would lead one toward religion? That they're less materialistic than prior generations, or what I'm getting at is you see all this data about this generation being lonely and suffering from a lot of mental health challenges and depression and anxiety. Those feel like things that might draw them towards deeper questions rather than just, when do I get my BMW and a promotion, like the me generation of the 1980s. So are those markers of Gen Z indicative of a generation that might be searching more for meaning?
I think it's Søren Kierkegaard said, you have to live life forward, but it only makes sense in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a classic case of that. Like, I think you're making a great case right now for me, Sky, of like why a revival could happen. I do agree with you. The data is clear on this. Young people, mental health wise, are struggling more than we've ever seen before. Socially, they're the least, I wrote about this, they're the least social generation we've ever seen in American history. They don't go on dates. They don't hang out. They don't get jobs. They just don't do stuff. They also don't do drugs, by the way. They don't have sex either. So like, what do you do with all that? Like it's kind of a real mixed bag on that. And I mean, I do think that for some of them, they will look around and go, hey, why is my life so meaningless and lonely and tiresome? Like, what do we not have that our grandparents had? And what can we get back to? But what I worry is the kind of churches they're not going to have many options for church to go back to. Because the buffet of American religion has significantly narrowed in the last 30 years, especially in rural parts of this country. So like where I live, small town, 40,000 people in my county, same size as it was in 1950, there is actually one viable mainline church in my entire county.
What about non-denominational churches?
There's one that's got 2,000 people about 4 blocks south of me right now.
Okay, so it's kind of the Walmart effect.
Exactly. Mergers and acquisitions is what I call it,
Yeah.
right? There's the small church is going to die, or at least the medium-sized church is going to become the small church, or it's going to become a very big church.
Okay,
like there's no in between.
But your assumption is that if there is a religious hunger, a searching among this younger generation, the buffet they're going to go to satisfy that hunger is a local church, and there's less of those to pick from. I'm not sure that's where this generation is going to go.
Where do you think it go online?
Will they go online?
Please, God, no.
I'm not advocating for this. I'm just saying, if I were a 25-year-old person and I'm struggling with the meaning of life, and I grew up non-religious, and I suddenly have all these questions about God and meaning and faith and values and existential dread and all that stuff, what am I going to do with it? My instinct is probably not going to go, I'm going to drive down the road and look for a church.
So the data says, I love my favorite, that's like tattooed on my forehead.
The data says.
The data says.
The survey says you should do like a Family Feud thing.
That's right. 5 things you bring to the beach. Number 1. So the data says, Pew actually did a survey on this like during like a year after COVID. So people were still kind of in lockdown-ish mode at that point, and asked people like, do you go in person? Do you go online? And then they asked people who went to both, who said they did go to in-person services and they watched online. What do they prefer? Even among Generation Z, 18 to 29-year-olds, 67% of them preferred in-person worship, about 15% had no opinion, and about 15% said they preferred online worship. So there's no preference there for online. Like the actual market of people who would just love to go online and not go anywhere, not even go in person at all, is infinitesimally small in America. Like it's a rounding error. So I just don't think that's the future.
I agree with you, and that speaks to the loneliness that the surveys keep reporting about this generation. They want community. They want incarnate community. I'm just thinking, if you're that person having these questions and you don't have community, your first instinct is probably going to be, I'm going to research these questions online. Maybe out of that, you find other people with similar questions. Maybe there's something locally that you can go and be a part of. But I don't know if it begins with, I'm going to go down to my local coffee shop and meet with my group of 3 friends that has coffee every other day. And I'm going to share with them some of my existential dread and ask them their questions and thinking about God and religion. And then, oh, by the way, one of them is going to invite me to their church. I'm not sure that's the sequence for this generation.
I don't even know what the sequence for this generation is. It's just wallow in your own misery. I mean, like, at some point, like, the more you look at the data, the more you go, you guys realize why things are bad, right? Like, I don't want to become like this old man yells at cloud thing, but it's like you stripped every social piece of American life away, and now we're lonely, and you go, gosh, it sucks to be lonely. Like, of course it does, because, and here's what I see, because one time I tweeted, stupidly, but I tweeted, I'm going to write a book someday, which I'm never going to do. I'm going to write a book someday called You Should Go to Church Even If You Don't Believe in Any of It. because I believe that's not for everyone, but for lots of people, that would make their life demonstrably, empirically better by just going to a house of worship on a regular basis. Even if they don't believe in a lick of it, they should just go. And the pushback was nope, that's not the answer. So it's
it's funny because Ross Douthat wrote that book essentially. I don't know if you saw his book, what's it called? Believe?
Believe.
Yeah, he was on our show to talk about it. And it's essentially, I mean, he's making an argument for the validity of religion, obviously, but he's also saying, hey, religion, apart from the supernatural elements of it, functions in a really positive way in society. And we're losing those positive outputs of religion because we're not participating in it. So why not engage it? And you might discover something that is valuable. And it sounds like you're making that same argument.
He leans a little too heavily on belief for my liking, though. Like because he comes at it from a philosophical, theological perspective. Does. I want to basically write a book where it's 12 chapters on how religion can make you happier, how it can make you wealthier, how it can make you less lonely, how it can make you more participative in democracy. All those things are true, by the way. It's just we haven't had a put them in one volume somewhere and make the case. Because if you read the literature about the value of church attendance, the positives far outweigh the negatives, and no one wants to say that, especially in academia, because it makes you look like you are proselytizing or something. But
do you genuinely believe that all those positives exist regardless of belief?
Yeah.
But doesn't
not all of them.
Doesn't there have to be a critical mass of actual belief within the church community to get those positives? Like if everyone kind of just looks around and goes, listen, we all know this is BS, right? Like no one actually believes this. Do you still get the benefits in a church like that?
I think listen, most churches now are full of the true believers, like at least the 80% believers or above. You know what I mean? And they can handle, the load can bear 30% believers and 20% believers.
Wait, 20% of non-believers?
Well, people who believed on a scale from 0 to 100, they're at a 20 on belief.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah.
They're a toe in, but mostly out. Guess what? The 80 people out of 100, they can bear that 25, 30 person. That's no problem for them because you've still got that core of true belief. And guess what? You know what, Sky? I tell people all this time. You know what I believe? Because others believed for me in some instances. Like their belief carried me through my chasm of unbelief. So what's the downside here? If you're a two out of 100, walk into a church, and if you see other people actually engaging with the material and learning and changing and growing, wouldn't that potentially make in your brain go, I wonder if I can go that direction too? Like I can be influenced by that idea.
Well, you're basically describing every child and teenager that's grown up in the church. Because at some point they've all gone, I don't know if I believe this. Yeah. And they look around their community and maybe their own parents and go, well, everyone around me seems to believe this. Maybe I should give it a try.
Yeah.
And for some of them, it sticks and they grow and develop and find a faith of their own. And for some, it doesn't. But
correct.
That's the formation of faith within a community.
It is, but then the question is, then why does it stick for some? This is what I think about as a social scientist. Why does it stick for some and not stick for others? And can you get to a point where it doesn't stick and then you come back to it later on because you have this sort of we call Daryl Van Tongeren calls it religious residue. Like Jesus is still in you somewhere, like hanging around. It's latent until you have an event in your life that makes it become active again. And then you come back to the church. Like we don't understand that process at all right now.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
A number of times in people's lives. But okay, before we wrap up this part anyway, going back to Gen Z.
Yeah.
There are fewer young people today who have that residue because fewer of them grew up in a congregation or grew up in a religious home. So there's that residue isn't there to reawaken. Even though we don't understand how it gets reawakened, it's not even there to be reawakened. And that's some of the reason why I get a little, not uncomfortable, but I'm not sure revival is the right word for what a lot of people want to see happen, because to revive means to bring back to life that which was once alive, right?
Correct.
I think we're looking at a culture and a society where there's a whole heck of a lot of people who were never alive in the faith to begin with.
Oh, that's actually the Pew report. The Pew Religious Landscape Survey just came out maybe 3 months ago, and they had a big report, 340-page report, which is like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with this? One of the top lines of that report is the stickiness of non-religion has gone up significantly over the last 30 years. And what do I mean by that? It's like the share of people who were born and raised without religion, who still have no religion as adults now, has risen from like 20% to 60%. So most people who are born nuns will die nuns today. That was not true 30 years ago. And if you're a Christian, that should terrify you, because it means like evangelism is done, man, or like it's less and less successful every generation. And that's what the data says. Actually, my data says that, and Pew data says that too, that the only group that's seen an increase in retention rate over the last 30 years are the nuns.
Wow. So it's a treadmill that looks a lot like Europe, where the increasing secularity and non-religious affiliation just carries itself forward with greater momentum.
Eventually it's going to peak, though. Like, retention's not going to get to 100% of the nuns.
Right.
Like,
well, but isn't that what we're kind of maybe seeing in the data? Is that slowing down?
It is. It's in the 60s now, which has been in the 60s the last 15 years or so, which is kind of like, okay, that's bad news, but good news. You know what I mean? Like, it's not good news overall. There's still 1/3 of nuns become something else as adults, like not Christians, but anything, right? Any religious faith. But when you see like retention rate of Catholics has dropped significantly, it's down 15 points over the last 40 years. Like, mainline retention rates are in the mid 50s now, which is not good. Evangelical retention rates, by the way, are still very good. They're still 70%. They're down from 80%, but that's still, like, in this environment, actually they're the only group with retention rates that exceed the nuns now, are evangelical. So we can talk about them ill all you want, but like at the end of the day, they keep their own better than almost anybody.
Okay, last question.
Yeah.
What role does immigration play in all of this? Because it seems like, I mean, Americans who are born here are having fewer children than ever. Mm-hmm. And a lot of our population growth is coming from immigration. Now, you can parse that as undocumented immigrants or legal immigration, doesn't matter. But the immigrants who are coming into this country tend to be more religiously affiliated than Americans who are born here. They're more Roman Catholic, they're more Christian, they're more committed to those things. So we have that population of Americans does have the residue. They are growing up in religious homes. Is that what's keeping us afloat here and not having the bottom drop out from under the church?
So I'll give you an interesting example, which is the Assemblies of God. Okay, Assemblies of God's a little over 3 million people, which means they're like in the big leagues of religion now. Mm-hmm. Like it's a major denomination, not like sort of like a mid-level denomination. They're the only large denomination in America that's seen sustained growth over the last 30 years. Now, COVID knocked them back, but if you take COVID out of it, they're straight line up. I mean, line go up every year, 1%, 2% every year, which is amazing, right? In this environment when the SBC is losing 250,000 people and everything else is falling apart. And Sky, if you look at why, like that's because why are they growing when everyone else is dying? In around 2000, their religious racial composition was all out of whack. Like it was very, very white, very few minorities. And today, the racial composition of the Assemblies of God looks exactly the same as America, which is unbelievable if you think about it, for a denomination to go from like 85% white to 60% white in 20 years. Like, that's how they're sustaining growth. Now, the problem they're facing is most of their pastors are still white. Like the pulpit and the pews are not matching. But to me, that's a fixable problem if you really want to fix it, because you can throw money at that problem and probably solve some of it at least going forward. But if you look at the SBC, it's 85% white denomination. That's one of the reasons they're failing. Look at all the mainline denominations, for goodness sakes. They're overwhelmingly white, and that's one of the reasons they're failing. So I do think denominations that manage to figure out the racial thing are going to have the non-denoms. A lot of those non-denom churches actually are fairly racially diverse, especially the big ones in metro areas. So if your church is majority white or even 80-90% white, you are in trouble, man. Well,
that's the irony, is I find like there's a big segment of the American church, especially the evangelical white church in America, that is always talking about a desire for revival, praying for revival and hoping for revival and looking at the data that you've laid out here and saying, oh, maybe this is the beginning of revival. And yet when you look at the data, it seems like if there's a revival that's going to unfold in America, it's probably going to come because of immigrants.
Yeah.
It's probably going to
be a hard thing.
And yet that's the same demographic that's most opposed to immigration.
Well, I mean, to get into the Cato Institute, libertarian think tank, if you want to grow GDP, you know what the one way to do it is? Open the floodgates for immigrants to come to America. That's the only way for our country. The fertility crisis is because white people are not having babies. Like, we can't have that conversation, though. Like, that's not how these things work. And that's I always tell my students, I go, here's what's great about our job. We can tell people what policies will work, and then the politicians have to figure out which ones are politically viable or not. It's not my job to say what's politically viable. I can just tell you what the data says. If you want X to happen, you have to do Y. And then you've got to figure out how to do Y. If a denomination wants to grow, it needs to figure out how to become racially diverse. That's what I know from the data. How you do that? I have no idea. But the current stance of most evangelicals is not open to the idea of growth in that direction.
Ryan, will you stick around for a 10, 15 minutes for a bonus segment? I want to talk to you about the piece you wrote about the closing of your own church last year and what's happened.
I'd love to, Scott.
Okay, so we're going to do that for Holy Post Plus subscribers. Ryan, thank you for being back. Again, Ryan's blog or
don't call it a blog.
Sorry, Substack. Your Substack, which is brilliant, is grapsaboutreligion.com. I read it all the time, and you'll bump into his work all over the mainstream media. Ryan, thanks for being with us.
The Holy Post Podcast is a production of Holy Post Media, produced by Mike Strelo, editing by Seth Gorvet. Help us create more thoughtful Christian media by subscribing to Holy Post Plus at holypost.com/plus. Also, be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts so more people can discover thoughtful Christian commentary, plus ukulele and occasional butt news. Visit holypost.com for show notes, news stories, Holy Post merchandise, and much, much more.